Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the 1001 Movies podcast. This time I'll be talking about Vittorio De Sica's 1970 drama, The Garden of the Finzi-Continis. A while back, the random number generator I used to pick films for this podcast went on a short Italian neorealistic kick, selecting films like Lea Ventura and Senso. I, and hopefully you with me, learned a little bit about the neorealist movement and some of its founders. One of them was Vittorio De Sica. In 1948, he made the classic Bicycle Thieves, known as simply The Bicycle Thief in the United States, and then he followed it up 4 years later with Umberto D. Both of these films are subjects for another podcast, as they're both listed in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. But the subject of this episode, The Garden of the Finzi-Continis, came near the end of his career, just 4 years before his death in 1974. It is, of course, not a neorealistic piece, but more on that in a moment. De Sica was an actor before he became a director, and IMDb credits him with an impressive 158 acting roles. In contrast, it lists him as directing only 35 films. He and his future wife founded their own theater company in 1927, although the first film he appeared in was a 1917 Italian silent adventure movie. In 1957, he was even nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his role in Farewell to Arms. Now, despite his acting chops, of course, De Sica is remembered primarily as a director. He made a mark in international cinema with 1946's Shoeshine, a neorealistic Italian classic about two shoeshine boys who find themselves entangled with the law after buying a horse from their proceeds from becoming innocuously involved with a small band of criminals. This was followed by Bicycle Thieves 2 years later, which was such a success that it was presented with the Special Foreign Language Film Award by the American Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. This was before they gave out awards for Best Foreign Language Film. Although De Sica was making a name for himself as a director, his personal life was not without scandal. He married his first wife, Giuditta, in 1937, and they had one child, but De Sica began carrying on an affair with Spanish actress Maria Mercado a few years later. He didn't divorce his first wife until 1954 and led a double life with two families for the benefit of his eldest daughter, whom they believed should not be without a father. His turbulent family life was coupled with an expensive gambling problem, which likely accounts for the number of acting parts he agreed to accept. By the 1960s, De Sica's star was fading, and he found himself directing lighter fare like 1964's Marriage Italian Style. However, for 10 years, he had been working on obtaining financing for The Garden of Finzi-Continis, based on the book of the same name by Giorgio Bassini. By the time he announced that he was going to make the film, he was likely already written off as a groundbreaking director, and no one could take him seriously. The result, of course, would surprise any of De Sica's naysayers. Set in a small Italian town during the late 1930s, The Garden of the Finzi-Continis is the tale of Giorgio, the son of a small middle-class Jewish family, and Mikkel, the daughter of the fabulously wealthy and also Jewish Finzi-Continis. Giorgio's father looks down on the Finzi-Continis, thinking that they like to flaunt their wealth and refuse to acknowledge their Jewish heritage. Indeed, at Passover, while Giorgio's family is busy with Orthodox rituals, the Finzi-Continis prefer to celebrate with parlor games. Giorgio is in love with Mikkel, but she spurns his advances for a ruggedly handsome and proudly not Jewish lover. All of this is set in the backdrop of the government enforcing a number of discriminatory laws. Giorgio's family find themselves secretly employing their Gentile housekeeper, as it becomes illegal for Jews to have non-Jewish servants. The film's conclusion is tragic, as Giorgio and Mikkel find themselves carted off to concentration camps with their respective families. Perhaps fortunately, we're spared being told their fate. Now, part of the tragedy in the Garden of Finzi-Continis lies within everyone's ignorance, sometimes willing ignorance, of what's going on in the world outside of their little town. Giorgio's younger brother, who goes to France for school, is confused and horrified when he learns that Jews are indeed being put into camps. Young Mikkel and her friends while away their time playing tennis and frolicking in the titular garden, hardly a care in the world. It's this disregard for everything around them that disgruntles Giorgio's father so much. De Sica films the garden without boundaries. It's clearly adjacent to the home of the Finzi-Continis, yet the camera is never willing to show us how small or how large it may be. It seems to have its own spatial coordinates, existing in a time and place outside both the joyous past and the tragic future. Other characters are portrayed with equal ambiguity. Mikkel's sickly younger brother hangs about in the background, listening to records and eyeing her lover. He is homosexual, although this is never talked about. The Garden of the Finzi-Continis revived Vittorio De Sica's career, although he only had a handful of films left in him before succumbing to lung disease in 1974. The movie went on to win the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, the BAFTA UN Award, and the prestigious Golden Bear at the Berlin International Film Festival. It remains De Sica's last great film. In 2002, a remake was announced for Italian television, although I could find nothing to confirm that it was ever even made. But what did I think of it? I originally saw this many years ago in the theater when it was given a short re-release. I remember being a bit bored, but I think that the ending actually made me cry. Watching it now, the reverse happened. The ending is predictable, but that's the point. It's somewhat frustrating watching Giorgio fawn over Mikkel when we know that any romance between them is doomed. De Sica abandoned some of his neorealistic roots by filming outdoor scenes brightly, and many times the film jumps from seeming to be overexposed to woefully underexposed, although my cheap DVD may be to blame for that. De Sica did not completely leave behind his classic methods, and preferred to hire amateur actors for many of the supporting roles, believing it would retain more of a realistic feeling. This works in spades, as all of the actors deliver in their roles. The Criterion Collection has released a number of De Sica's works on DVD and Blu-ray, dedicating a 2-disc set and a booklet of essays for Bicycle Thieves, but this film remains untouched by them. This is a shame because, as romance, a piece of drama, and a landmark in De Sica's career, it's actually quite remarkable. That's all I have to say about the Garden of the Finzi-Continis, and tune in next time when I talk about the 1903 silent classic, The Great Train Robbery, directed by Edwin S. Porter. In the meantime, be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter via 1001moviespc, and send any questions or comments you may have to 1001moviespodcast@gmail.com. Happy viewing.